Thank you for joining us for the Midweek Message. Paul in Ephesians chapter 4, which is where we are today, is trying to help this young church understand that there is a difference, or should be a difference, between the way that Christians behave versus the way that non-Christians behave. In the life of the Christian, it should be marked by something different than what the world behaves as. Now, in modern day, we tend to think about dress and all these different outward appearance things, and we worry about so many different outward appearance. Paul understands and shares with us that the main difference begins on the inside, that literally the inside influences the outside. So many times we think, we use the old phrase, dress for success, as though the outside changes the inside. But the truth is any real change begins on the inside. So Paul talks about what are these things that the Christian should do, how should they change the inside, what should be different about the inside versus the outside. So let's look at this together. Ephesians chapter 4, we're going to start in verse 17. This I say therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind, having their understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God, because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart, who, being past feeling, have given themselves over to lewdness, to work all uncleanness and greediness. So the first thing he does is he marks the non-Christian life. This is what the non-Christian life looks like. This is the internal struggle that takes place. This is what causes the outward appearance of the non-Christian. He says, first of all, it's marked by the futile mind. This is all a part of not living for God. The futile mind. In other words, they're focused on the wrong thing. The person who is not living for God doesn't think about God, doesn't think about godly things. They're so focused on the world around them that they miss God entirely. It's the futility of the mind. Secondly, it's the understanding that's darkened. In other words, not only do they think on the wrong thing, they're believing the wrong thing. They have an idea that they can put their faith in science or humanism, to speak about modern terms, or they put themselves at forefront, or people at forefront, or parts of the creation at forefront, rather than understanding that the most important thing is the relationship with the Creator. They have no space for Him. The life of the unbeliever is also marked by an alienation from God. They are rejecting the relationship. Not only do they not understand the things about God because they're not focused upon Him, not only are they not believing the things about God because they don't believe in Him, it's ultimately they are rejecting God. They're rejecting the very relationship with the Creator that He longs to have. They're rejecting the power of God in their life. And because of that, their life is marked. They also have a sense of ignorance. Now, this isn't a lack of knowledge. This isn't not knowing or not understanding something. This is literally a wrong understanding. A wrong understanding about what is really in charge. A wrong understanding about who is really in control. A wrong understanding about who God is. He's not just some form that people worship. Ultimately, He's more than a philosophical idea. Ultimately, He's more than a theological idea. God ultimately is a being that has created us and longs to have part in our lives. The unbeliever has no place in that. They would be ignorant of that fact. And then there's the blindness of their heart. This is the rejecting of the love of God. And I want to tell you, of all the things, this one may be the most heartbreaking, because not only do they refuse to believe that there is a God or that He wants to take part in their lives, they refuse to believe that that love that God has for them could even exist. And that changes the way they behave. Because when you don't believe that God loves you, or that there isn't any place for love, then truthfully, it's hard to ever share love. You may share the idea of love or the understanding of love, but for the person who does not understand or receive the love of God, it's hard to share that kind of love with others. It also says that they are given to lewdness. They're past feeling and they're given to lewdness. In other words, they have no sense of conviction, and because they have no sense of conviction, ultimately the way in which they live is a lewd way of living. In other words, it is a misappropriation of creation, whether it be in the way in which we interact with one another, whether it be the way in which relationships are handled. They have no caring for their own bodies. They have no caring for the bodies of others. They have no caring for other people's thoughts or feelings or ideas. And there's all these lewd acts, and it's a part of their life because ultimately they don't think there is any kind of a moral standard. And finally, when it comes down to it, and the final idea of what is the greatest mark of the non-believer's life, it's greed. They are self-centered in their thinking. They are self-centered in their thoughts and actions because they have no moral authority, no divine authority, no love authority. There's no central figure around which they can behave. So therefore, they become the central figure. They become the center of their world. They become the center of their universe. They become the center of every relationship. It's all about what I want. It's all about what I need. It's all about what I can get. That is at the heart of the non-believer's life. Because if there is no God, then I become God, or the person becomes God. And I want to tell you, that's a horrible, horrible place to be. There's the key to greed. So he goes on to say, that's how the non-believer acts. So the believer should be different. The believer should act and look and react differently. There ought to be some actions that produces fruit. And so he talks about in verse 20, listen to what he says. He says, but you have not so learned Christ. If indeed you have heard Him and have been taught by Him, as the truth is in Jesus, that you put off concerning your former conduct the old man which grows corrupt according to deceitful lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man which was created according to God in true righteousness and holiness. Compared to the non-Christian's life, the Christian's life should be focused towards the truth of Christ. It should be focused towards turning away from self and turning towards Christ. That's true in our conduct and the way in which we behave towards ourselves and other people. That's true in the corruption of our heart, mind, strength, and soul. You see, if you turn away from Christ, you are corrupting all these things. But if you turn towards Him, you turn towards the incorruptible nature of Christ. And it affects our heart, mind, strength, and soul, all aspects of the human being. You see, we're turning away from self means turning away from lust. You see, lust is focused upon pleasing ourselves instead of pleasing God. And you're turning away from those things and putting on the new man. What does the new man look like? It's the image of Christ. We're striving to be more like Jesus every day. It's the righteousness of Christ in us, not the righteousness in and of ourselves. The righteousness of Christ, the holiness of Christ. The reason that we have a relationship with God, the reason we have the hope of heaven, the reason there's any good in us is because of Jesus Christ. You see, we see it in truth of Christ. We see it in the love of Christ. When you talk about what does this new person look like, this new man look like, it looks like Christ. In truth, in love. I want to tell you, if we would stop worrying so much about what we look like on the outside and start truly allowing Christ to change us on the inside, I believe the outside will take care of itself. So today I want to encourage you, put on the new person. That's what Paul's telling this church to do, and you know what? I think it's good advice for you and I today. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching.